right, welcome to our Circular Voices series. It is a great pleasure to be joined by Courtney Holm this morning. We are celebrating World Circular Week this week by trying to shed a little bit of light on the different angles or the different sort of spectrums within the or the different kind of corners of circularity within the spectrum of the whole industry. So it's very interesting to speak to somebody working so passionately in circular fashion. Fashion obviously has this very negative history when it comes to the environment and its impact. So it's really cool to see someone sort of fighting from within and taking up arms, if you like, against that challenge from inside rather than pointing the finger. So giving us a sort of an insight into your inspiration.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess it's a long story, so I'll try to keep it as short as possible. But I was doing a little bit of work in the fashion industry after finishing uni and kind of getting out into the industry. And I was really challenged personally by the amount of waste that I saw generated in the manufacturing process. And even from the very small amounts that I was seeing, it really dawned on me that there was a big issue here that needed to be addressed, and that I didn't really feel comfortable starting a fashion label and contributing to the waste that everybody else contributes to unless I was doing something to tackle it and really radical to change it. So that's kind of how it all started in a very brief story. It's a longer story than that, but that's a brief one. And yeah, so now, fast forward 6 years from when the label launched, A.BCH, we're a circular fashion label, and everything that we create is made for biological circularity. That is the kind of top value. And everything kind of stems from that, those boundaries. And so we don't create product for no reason. And there's a lot of intent that goes into making anything.
Amazing. Cool. Wow. So 6 years. So that is that's a nice piece of time to develop and grow a brand and understand your market and your business. Could you take us through a little bit the story of that journey of the development of the business and the brand?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess it started off as, a very small collection, just 6 pieces we launched with. And essentially when we started, we were doing everything ourselves. Everything was kind of bootstrapped, startup style. And we essentially had to build our customer base from scratch. And the idea was that we would sell direct to consumer in order to keep the prices as low as possible. We also are very dedicated to local manufacturing and to celebrating the skills and work involved in creating clothes. So for us, it was really important that we made locally and that we, I guess, brought some of those the garment workers' stories and the skills that they possessed into the story of what we did. And so that's one of the reasons why we decided to start with direct to consumer. And then from there, we have done a variety of different things, from having live showroom pop-ups where people could come in and not only see the clothes, but also see how we create the garments. So behind the scenes, making kind of like an open studio sort of style. And so we've done plenty of those. So in kind of shopping centers, in studio spaces, kind of all around. And that gave us very valuable feedback from our customers about our sizing, about the, I guess, ability to be able to customize clothes. And that's where we got the idea, or it came direct from our customers, that customization was important, and making clothes that fit them perfectly was actually a big indicator of how long something would stay in their wardrobe, and its durability with the customer from an emotional perspective. So we learned a lot through being able to speak to people face to face. And I guess from there, we've done several things, whether it's events like that, or runway shows or talks, trying to be involved in the industry whenever possible, as well as educating the next generation of designers that are coming through. So I do a lot of lecturing for RMIT, which is our big fashion uni here. And just, I guess, trying to help people understand that, it's not a circular business, is not just this opt-in thing. It's very holistic. It's something that we can't do alone either. We need other businesses and brands to do the same thing that we're doing so that it can work as a system. And so really sharing the message and sharing what we do has been a really big part of us growing our name, growing our kind of standing within the industry. So that's been, pretty significant, and has kind of led to a second business model for us as well, which is where we sell surplus materials. So when we find a really fantastic material that we can work with that's biological, such as like a biodegradable elastic or a thread that's not made from plastic, but that's still strong enough to hold up a garment for its lifetime, we often have to order high minimum order quantities. And so what we do is we share that with like the smaller businesses that would never be able to access that, or the home sewers or the students or people that are just starting out. And so we found that there's a really big demand for this, and it's a way that we can actually support people to transition into circularity as well. So it's not just about kind of making product and pushing product. That's just like a portion of our business. There's actually so much more to it around education and learning and industry advocacy. So it's a bit of a world. But essentially, the last, nearly 3 years with COVID has been very strange. It's really hard for me to look back and go, we did this business activity and that business decision equals this, because everything was so topsy-turvy. And so we're just reestablishing what is normal right now and trying to get back to a sense of, normalcy, but also understanding that things have changed and how we kind of navigate the next phase.
Wow, interesting. Wow, what a journey you've been on. It's amazing what you can, where when you take a principled stand on something and commit to that, where it can lead you and where it can lead your business. I think I was speaking with Andrew from Kib Tea, a circular tea brand, and he had a similar story. They started an initial business model, and by committing to circularity, they identified other, for them was other crops that they were able to monetize and build a business model around. So it's quite interesting how once you commit to something, that what opportunities can kind of initially open up for you there, if you can kind of maximize that. I'm super interested in the skills that were existing when you started, and whether or not they were there or they were captured before, because that sort of seamstress skill is quite a traditional old skill. And I think, has been lost predominantly in Western culture, I think. So it's really interesting that you were able to harness that when you started out.
It's an ongoing issue, especially in Australia. We are very, isolated down here, and everybody wants to be a designer. Nobody wants to be a machinist or a technician, and so it's a very difficult thing to find someone that is their passion and that's what they want to do. But I think part of what's happened with us over time is we've moved away from factory working, like outsourcing with factory workers that we did at the start, and we've really moved in it more internal as much as possible. So as of this year, 100% of our pieces are made in-house, and so what that means is we can actually have our own employees be the doing the machining, but also we can create a slightly different way that gets done. So rather than kind of assembly line work, or every so often you have to employ some of those assembly line mentalities, but that's not like the bulk of what someone would do. Like, it would be a start to finish job. There's pride in the work. There's also a lot of collaboration between how to make things work. Sometimes it's not as straightforward as just changing everything to a circular based material that could go into the product. You have to actually workshop the design changes to accommodate that, such as like seam differences, or allowing for repairability, or allowing for disassembly. So, those kinds of things require a conversation between a very skilled machinist as well as the designer to talk together about how things could be improved and changed. And it's a dialogue and it's a collaboration. It's not like, I'm the designer, now go make all these clothes down in the factory. Like, it's like we're all working together, and it's a collaboration. So yeah.
Nice. That's interesting. So I suppose that leads nicely into my next question, which is around actually the sort of fundamentals of circular fashion. So I guess if you could enlighten us as to what they are, and maybe to do that through the eyes of a particular garment that is, one of your most circular products. I assume they're all circular, but if you could just speak us through that journey, then we can learn a little bit more about what the fundamentals of circular fashion is.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think, so, yeah, circular fashion has the same fundamentals as any other circular product, but it's a very complicated product. It's not as simple as, you know, using one type of plastic or just a food item, or, you know, it can get a lot more complicated because you're dealing with so many different materials. And so all those inputs that go into making a garment are very complex, very different. And the diversity of those materials means it's really hard to deal with them at the end of life. And they're usually so linked up. So think of sewing threads sewn into a garment. They're so linked up that even if you could, you know, separate them, it would be so laborious and would take so much time to do the separation. And then even at that point, it's like hardly worth it from an economic standpoint to then go and recycle that material or compost it if it was compostable. So yeah, similar principles, but there's a lot more complexity. So I guess the best thing to do is I guess I can talk you through a garment and a journey through the life cycle of a garment. So I can use, for example, a linen shirt. I think that's a good one because it has a really short supply chain, so it'll be a shorter example. But yeah, our beautiful AR5 linen shirt it's made primarily from organic linen that's grown in France. It's processed in Belgium, so really nice short supply chain. And from Belgium, it's sent directly to us. So there's not heaps of travel from that material being grown to being processed to being made into a fabric. It's also dyed, and you know, if it's whitened in the same area in Belgium. And then it comes to us, we take it in-house, we would cut and sew that piece. That particular piece is a made to order piece, so we would make it as we go, as the customers order it, and hold the material as like whole stock rather than making it into a bunch of garments that may or may not sell in different sizes. We'll keep it in the fabric form for as long as possible. We don't do made to order for absolutely all of our garments, but we have a large portion of our garments are now made to order. And that's an intentional switch to, again, try to preserve materials. And then we can actually take that linen and we can make it into 5 or 6 different other products. So that it's not just going to sit there in fabric form, or it has the potential to be sold into other materials as well, which are also made to order. But then once it comes into kind of our hands, that's where it gets complicated because we're the ones that are adding other things to it to make it into a shirt. And so we're adding in threads, we're adding in buttons, we're adding in labels, and there's 3 different kinds of labels that go into any one garment. So you're looking at lots of different potential materials that are coming into play with this material that we have worked so hard to find from a traceable, ethical source. And then it's the same process for all of those inputs that come in, and we put it all together. And so when we put that together, we are working with biological materials, so materials that can safely go back into the earth at the end of their life. But we also have a plan, an end of life plan for that garment, so that it's not just going to be one solution, like buried in your backyard. That's one possible last worst case scenario. If you really have nowhere for it to go, that's where it can go, worst case. But we want to create a garment that is actually recyclable by means of mechanical recycling and chemical recycling. We also want to make a garment that's repairable. So that's why we have services built into our products. So for example, we do free repairs for life on all of our garments, so that the garment itself has got more durability just by the fact that we're taking ownership for its lifespan. Additionally to that, we also offer quite a lot of support in terms of the care of the garment. So it starts off with just a digital care guide. So anytime someone buys a product from us, they get a digital care guide. But we're also really happy and often we'll help our customers if they've got a particular stain. We'll give them advice on how to get it out, which is a bit more of an organic back and forth. But we're very clear that we are here to support that customer with that garment throughout its lifespan. And then finally, when the garment can no longer be worn by that customer for whatever reason, they can either choose to, put it up onto an app where they can resell it to someone else, or they can rent it out if they just want to rent their wardrobe, or they can decide they want to just send it back to us and we'll give them a credit for that to return it to us. And we'll decide. We'll do an assessment of it. Does it have any more life left in it? If so, what does it need? Does it need repairs? Does it need over dyeing? What are a possible lifespan for this garment's next life? If there are none, let's say it's fully tattered and in shreds, we can actually take that into our recycling program where we can shred that back down and reblend it with some virgin material to create new yarn, new fiber, and basically make new fabric. So that's the circular process. And the idea is that we shouldn't have any material go to waste. And so I've just talked about a garment, but that garment itself creates waste in its own existence. So in the manufacturing stage, which is the stage we directly control, we're cutting out a shape out of a rectangle, which always results in some negative space being left over. Those pieces are essentially sorted into a waste hierarchy of, like, just essentially the sizes of them. So like large pieces, medium pieces, small pieces, and each of those pieces can go into a new area. So large pieces can be used to make, replacement collars and cuffs, things that might either come back to us and need repair, or things that we make a mistake on during production. We have like a surplus of these smaller offcuts that we can utilize for things. Medium offcuts can be used for something we call making cut piece, where we join pieces together to create new pieces of fabric. Very time consuming, very laborious, but that sort of thing would go into our red line, which is our 100% made from waste line that we do, again, on the side as to what we do, which is a creative, dictated by the shapes of the offcut sort of process. Very fun, very hands-on, but very time consuming. So it's kind of done as it can get done. And then those tiny little pieces, if they can't be used for any other style to create any other piece, they can go into the recycling program, and all the little shreds that come off the sewing machines, like bits of thread and fluff that come out of that process, they can all go into the recycling program as well. So essentially bagging up all of the pieces that can't get used and shredding them back down again, like I said before, turning it into new fabrics. So that's basically it in a nutshell. Really
wow. Wow, amazing. It's amazing. It is so complex, and it's incredible undertaking to, like I said, commit to it at every stage is amazing. And it's wonderful that you're doing it, also that there's an audience who are enthusiastic and committed to parts, because like you say, it's a relationship, isn't it? They have to commit to sort of understanding the care and the repair and the whole process. So yeah, very, very cool to be fostering that in a customer base. You seem quite passionate and I'm curious as to what is it about the work that you love the most, because it's always interesting to speak to people about why they love what they do. And so my question is, which part is it that you are most enthused by?
I guess like I'm quite a big picture kind of person. I like to consider, I'm a systems thinker, and I like to consider the whole strategy of things. And I think for me, that's where I get like the most excited, is thinking of the strategy and the future and how things are going to come together and work, and coming up with systems. So having, ways that we can, I guess, support what we do and creating systems that make that easier. So, I don't know, I guess that sort of side of things is great. I do a lot of random things, so it's hard to like pick like the most exciting one, but I also think I get particularly excited when there's movement in industry and there's an opportunity to contribute and collaborate and share knowledge and expertise, and people are willing to listen. Then I always get excited about that, and I'm happy to contribute to those kinds of things. So yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, awesome. All right. Thank you very much for your time. I want to finish this with one last one. If you could point us in the direction of other circular fashion heroes that you're aware of, because obviously it's quite a niche section, I would imagine, within the fashion world. And so it's great to be able to shine lights on people who are doing work such as yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a very common thing that you'll find. I would say that there's definitely businesses that are doing aspects of circularity really well. So I probably would say that holistic, full cycle thinking, I think, is still a really big ask of most businesses, and they haven't quite got there yet. But like I said, there are people doing parts of it. So for example, Renter is a great example of a company in Australia that's doing clothing rental, but they're really passionate, not just about renting clothes for the sake of pumping out volume, but they're really passionate about the circularity aspect and actually reducing impact. So I think that's a good one to pull out. Another one is interesting is Citizen Wolf, another I'm going to use Australian examples over here.
Great.
So like they're friends of mine, but they're doing amazing things in made to order like t-shirts where they're using lasers to cut out and using an algorithm that they've developed to figure out people's sizes. And they have a very good accuracy of essentially you put in 3 figures and they just custom make that garment to fit you. So really love what they're doing. They're kind of pals of mine. So it's nice to shout out a friend. And who else has been doing something really good in the space? I think there's so many little brands doing like upcycling and kind of doing their part to take on waste, which is a really hard job. Like it's not easy. But there's one company that is doing more of a commercial level, and that they're not like selling fashion, but what they are doing is taking any clothes from any person or any business, and they'll take those into their warehouse. They sort through all of the clothes. They're called apparel, like apparel.
Okay.
And they'll sort through all of the clothes. They'll basically determine whether things are wearable or not. And these are things that the people who have sent to them have determined not to be wearable, but they basically put it through another process to capture and save anything that's still wearable and still usable. And they're able to work with charity partners to move that on. Anything that's not wearable, they're recycling into essentially like insulation and mats for playgrounds and like all sorts of things. They take shoes, they take all sorts of stuff. But they're doing some really important work in Australia that has been like a gap for a while. So I think it's important to call out those businesses that are kind of doing the dirty work as well. Because that to me is a prime example of a circular fashion that is not really talked about. It's not the shiny thing that you associate necessarily, but it's a really important part of the life cycle. So there's a few examples.
Brilliant. Great. Yeah, it's great. It's getting color from all parts of the world as well. So it's awesome. And I totally agree that another one of our circular voices this week is a man called Matt, who works in a materials reclamation process where he's managing the recycling of a municipality, and that is just so kind of far away from our quite commercial customer facing business model, but such a critical part of circularity, especially for us in plastics. It's like crucial that we understand and we work with those partners, and it's been brilliant to make those connections. And that's the whole point of, I think, World Circular Week is to connect those parts of the cycle, because circularity is fundamentally, by definition, a cycle, and so we need that connection, and we need to learn from each other and understand those needs and requirements. So so amazing. Thank you so much. It genuinely has been really fascinating, Courtney. Really nice to speak with you, and we wish you the very best with A.BCH Fashion.
Thank you so much. Lovely to chat with you. Have a wonderful day ahead.